Well, what I wanted to kind of add to that was that artificial intelligence is taking off, and it's only going to get more. It's only going to build out. That's not really something that we can stop, and we don't really have control over. But what we do have control is our community participation, our participation in local governance, participation in local government, participation in your local community boards, right? So when you have communities such as the one that you mentioned that's being negatively impacted by this data center that was put into their community, it makes me wonder, so when they did that, they asked permission from the community to do that? And if they did, how many community members actually attended those meetings? And how many community members were involved in the governance process, you know? So I think that's the importance of like the community participation and the advocacy. I know we're all really tired after work, right? Everybody's really tired. You want to go home and eat, but sometimes there are these community boards, and these folks will go to your local community boards and local government and present these projects. But if you're not there to give your opinion and push back, then these projects are being implemented with little community pushback. I think that can be really difficult also in environmental justice communities where sometimes people are working multiple jobs. They're working in the daytime and they're working maybe part-time or at nighttime in order to fend for their families. So I think that there needs to be one, like I said, more community participation and an intentional effort from local advocacy groups, whether those are nonprofits or volunteer-run groups, to be at those meetings and be the voices for those who are not able to attend those meetings. They can't come into your community without your permission. I used to work for a nonprofit called We Act for Environmental Justice. It's one of the first groups, environmental justice groups, I worked with here in New York City. I live in Washington Heights and I was raised in the Heights. And I remember when Riverbank State Park was built in the early 90s, and I remember thinking it was a brand spanking new shiny park. And I couldn't wait to go, and I was only 5 years old. But that park was created as a result of a lawsuit. And the lawsuit was as a result of a group that came into Harlem, and they pretty much built a sewage waste treatment plant without any permission from the community. And you could smell it all the way from rivers, where the river was, all the way to Convent Avenue, where City College is, and even past City College. And so what those advocates did was they pretty much coordinated with the local media, and they said, at this day, at this time, we're going to shut down the highway. So they calculated when the traffic in the highway was the lowest, and they chose that point. And they held hands and they blocked the highway traffic for 3 to 4 hours. And they had all the local media groups come in and record this, because they were saying, oh, people are coming in and out of our community and it smells like crap here and nobody cares, but we're stuck with the smell of this sewage. So we were able to do this not as a result of economic power. This is an environmental justice community. They did it as a result of people power. So with these AI centers, people need to get together and be strategic, call in the local media, and utilize their people power to shut it down.
Protests and public demonstrations definitely highlight the issues happening in these smaller communities, but unfortunately they don't always solve the problem. But they are definitely important in creating and highlighting the issue or ending the issue.
But even like getting media attention to the problem is a huge first step.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll just add really quickly. I definitely agree with what was said here, but I also say, like kind of to your point, they did go in and build that waste treatment plant without community input, and they do go in without community input and build these things. And sometimes it's not enough to go into community hearings, because these data centers that are building AI right now, sure, they need to legally have a community hearing, but they purposely hide it in papers, newspapers. They purposely hide it when they're having these hearings. They don't put out these hearings until maybe 2 days before, you know? And this is not they do this on purpose, because even if one community member shows up and agrees, that's going to go through. So sometimes it has to be, I really would like to highlight that it's really more about awareness, educating our communities about this thing that they do to hide it from our communities, but also awareness and education around the data centers themselves. Like, how many of you guys have heard about these data centers before? Exactly, 2 people. A lot of us don't even know what we're talking about. So like, AI has these, in order for AI to run, they need these large data centers that suck up a lot of water, land. It's really detrimental to the environment. And so they're putting it up in Black and brown communities. They're sucking up the environment, killing the environment, and they're having community hearings. Community members are showing up, but it's not enough. It's up to advocacy and groups to really talk to our community and educate them about this detrimental thing that's happening. In New York, there's a lot of tribal and indigenous communities, and I don't know if you're familiar with tribal and indigenous communities in New York, but a lot of them are Black-led, and a lot of them are really right now also fighting data centers being put up against their reservations and private land. And this is happening in New York right now, where there's a tribe fighting, putting up against a data center. And they've gone to community meetings and they've done the work, and this data center is still on the verge of being constructed right now. And so it's really just like, we have to build people power. And I think it's about really showing them that people also, that even your one AI search where you're like, what is a recipe for so-and-so is super impactful to the environment. It is sucking up water at a greater rate than folks have ever seen before. And these data centers are running so hot that water evaporates so fast that they have to keep taking in more water. So I think we really need to start at the bottom with educating the people about just even what data centers are and how they run and how they're impactful to the environment. And then you can wake the consciousness of the people, and the people can start to organize around those issues. So, yeah.
Amazing, thank you so much for that. Even spaces like this, we're all learning together, we're hearing from these 3 amazing people, and I think education and educating the community is very important. And when it comes to this, especially when it comes to environmental issues or any type of advocacy, we learn from our past, from our history, correct? Like, these demonstrations have happened in the past, these panels have happened in the past, and we all learn from what came before. So my question is, how have your experiences within environmental justice been influenced by Black women or practices you have learned from Black women? You can also start differently. You don't need to go this order. You're more than welcome to chime in.
Well, we're going to say, unfortunately, the way that we feel is that we still haven't learned as human beings. We haven't learned from history, because if we were looking to history, we would understand the devastations that have been caused. Even from the Cross Farms Expressway, tearing down a number of neighborhoods, to, if we look back even further, Seneca Village, if we look back even further, or even recently, we were just looking at a documentary about San Juan Hill, that where Lincoln Center literally destroyed the neighborhoods, Black neighborhood.
Important to highlight.
And yet we are still here. And it's not to say that we should always raise our voice, we should always advocate, we should always do these things, and yet human beings still have yet not learned the devastations that have been caused historically from millennia ago.
Right,
and
the
so
story's repeating itself.
It constantly repeats itself. And here we are, people who are advocating, and they don't, when big money comes in, they don't care. At this point, AI has become, we look all the time, and it's like looking for people who are AI savvy to do employment, or utilizing it for this. And now the next thing is like, it's going to take over white collar jobs and blah 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 blah. And it's like we're at this point where it's almost like, how do you bring it back? How do you How do you pull it back to say, hey, we already know how devastating coal has been, and yet this administration is saying we have to go back to coal. We have to, we have to use coal. We have to tear down, our lands are no longer protected with them. They're going to be tearing down a number of different, this administration is out of control, right? They do not care about any environmental issues. It's all about profit over people. So and which is why when we said it's a little bit overwhelming, it's a little bit numbing, because there's such an overwhelm. And we think about our, the seeds, and what are we are not going to go on a tangent, please. Because we were just thinking about, people were thinking about these pink dolphins that were showing up, and we were like, why pink dolphins? Like, what's going on in the oceans that you would have pink dolphins? Doesn't seem natural to us. It's like, what are the chemicals happening? Is that burning their skin that they would be pink? We never looked into it, but it was just one of those points that we always have, we're a multitude of things that we're thinking about all the time.
Also, with social media, it's so easy to just see a whole bunch of...
We don't even go on there anymore. It's too much.
Well, how have you all learned from Black women? We'll do questions right after they answer this.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of my career has been influenced by Black women. A lot of my inspiration came from Black women. I remember being in college and learning about the work of Majora Carter, who started Sustainable South Bronx in the Bronx. This was many, many years ago, and at the onset, Sustainable South Bronx was an environmental justice organization. It later became, I think, a consulting firm, and it's had many transformations. And what stuck out to me was the fact that she would always say, you don't need to leave your community in order to do good work, or you don't need to leave your community in order to live in a good community. A lot of people think that leaving their community to another place where maybe it looks more clean cut is the only way. There's ways that you can stay and support your community. But even beyond that, I've worked with Black female nonprofit leaders, and I learned many things. I learned, one, the importance of community participation, the importance of showing up to a meeting and figuring out who organized this event. Let me go introduce myself to this person. They need to know you on a name-by-name basis, and they need to know your face, right? I hadn't realized how important it is, but if you're in this space and if you're doing this work, people need to know who you are. They need to be able to automatically pinpoint you out of a crowd, as well as the importance of utilizing your voice. You can't show up to a space and call yourself an advocate and at no point have made any kind of statement or comment about anything or any introduction, right? Also the importance of just being at the community meetings. I remember at the onset of my career, I hated going to those meetings. I was like, I gotta be out, gotta stay out until 7, 8 o'clock at night. I gotta go to the community board. Why can't someone else do this? But quite frankly, that's where the important work is. It's in those hours where you don't want to work. It's in those hours where it's inconvenient for you. And the importance of sitting with that inconvenience, and the importance and also seeing the value of sitting with those feelings of maybe you're missing out on other things. And it all comes back to you in the end. But I think that a lot of the work that I have done working on a variety of different environmental justice projects has been influenced by kind of the leadership of different Black women at different points in my life.
Thank you.
I'll be really short. So I'm a Boricua woman in environmental justice. So Afro-Boricua women have just shaped my career in this space from the beginning. And I am going to read something for this because I want to make sure that I want to say what I want to say correctly. So I did write a little something, but As a Boricua woman, I carry that lineage with me, where our bodies has held the memory of survival, of tending to the land, of people in the midst of displacement, slavery, colonization, and state violence. It's Black women on the island, on the archipelago, here across the diaspora, who have taught me that environmental justice is not just about policy, it's about caring about your people. It's about taking care of your home. It's about having access to clean water, about raising your children without fear of eviction, toxic exposure, or state neglect. I also represent an organization called Adolfina. We're a Puerto Rican women's org that fights for the independence of Puerto Rico. It's named after Adolfina Villanueva, who was a Afro-Boricua woman in Loíza, Puerto Rico. And she was defending her land when she was killed and shot by Puerto Rican police because she didn't want to leave. They wanted to steal her land to build a summer home for one of the Catholic, what do you call them? Catholic priests? What do you call them? And so by defending her land, she was simply killed. And so we honor that legacy through this work, just through that. Her story reminds us that many Black women who fight and have fought to protect their land definitely shape the work that we move in. From Black women, I've learned that care is a form of resistance, that organizing also means feeding your people and checking in on your elders, honoring your intuition, and refusing to separate the fight for environmental injustice and the fight against racism and colonialism. And I practice this all the time by showing up in these spaces and centering those who've been impacted by the fight the most and who are constantly on the front lines putting their bodies in this place. So
thank you so much. That was beautiful. And that was perfect to lead into, does anybody in the audience have a question?